In weather like this, you typically brace for surprises, like skids and limited visibility. But this time, it's different. The driver made a pass to get ahead at the railroad crossing, which was about to open any second. The barrier lifted, signaling it was time to go. Not for the cars, though, but for the train. In just a few seconds, the electric train zoomed through the crossing, announcing its arrival with a loud honk. It's a risky situation. Just imagine what would happen to a car if they collided. The only thing that could have warned drivers before the honk was the traffic lights, stubbornly staying red even after the gates and barrier opened. Thankfully, drivers on both sides of the crossing didn't rush, and everything went well. In dangerous spots like crossings, it's best to be extra careful. This is how they were testing a new fuel tender design by simulating a collision with a truck weighing 36 tons traveling at about 70 kilometers per hour. The test went well, and its findings will help develop safer ways to transport flammable materials. In this video about railroads' cognitive errors, a guy with a plank in his hands waited at a crossing for a train surpass on one track. Not realizing that a train might come from the opposite direction on the second track at the same time, especially since the first train was blocking its view. Thankfully, someone shouted a warning just in time. During Bangladesh's annual Biswa Ijtima festival, traveling on overcrowded trains becomes a unique part of a pilgrimage experience for many. While these passenger journeys aren't exactly safe or normal, it's impressive to see the skills of the train drivers. Train and car incidents don't just happen at crossings. Somehow owners left their cars dangerously close to the tracks, so it's no wonder they got hit by trains passing by. This is what happens when basic safety rules are ignored. We're used to seeing the railway as a finely tuned system governed by rigid standards. But even it can have spectacular mishaps. This mishap in Memphis, Texas, cost $1 million, as you can see. The train was too tall to pass under the bridge. The bridge crumpled the metal roofs. The train cast like wet cardboard. The likely cause was a dispatcher mistake. Who sends an oversized train onto a track, usually meant for smaller tank cars? And to make matters worse, it wasn't just the roofs of the train. Cars that got damaged. Look at those poor vehicles. Now it's clear why the damage estimate was so high. When it's the rainy season in the tropics, there's water all around. Passengers at Nalasipara station in Mumbai, India found this out firsthand. Later, the railway crew commented that the engineer has followed all the rules. Even mass amounts of water shouldn't have changed the speed. In Gibbon, Nebraska, people driving by managed to film a major railroad accident. The video shows just how quickly train wrecks can happen. It was truly a devastating and major incident. The transportation company reported soon after the crash that a freight train derailed for unknown reasons. 20 different cars damaged, many of them overturned. Fortunately, no one was injured by accident. The train was moving across a high speed, causing the carriages to scatter over a large area and completely block all 3 railway lines. Thankfully, none of the carriages reached the nearby road. The run-in with one of those carriages, each weighing several dozen tons, even without cargo, would not have been a good thing. Seeing a train accident up close can be quite terrifying considering the enormous mass. Moving at such a high speed, the chilling sound of metal twisting is enough to make your blood run cold. It's one of those incidents that not only stops train traffic, but also brings life in the whole town to a standstill. Train tracks have been a regular sight in cities for a long time, but it's incredible how they can be so well integrated into the environment. In certain places in Vietnam's capital city of Hanoi has a bustling alley that leaves tourists with unforgettable experiences. With a population of around 6.5 million people, Hanoi faces a pressure issue of urban density and ramparts illegal destruction. One notable consequence is a stretch of railroad tracks extending south from the central station. This track essentially serves as a street where ordinary life buzzes houses, restaurants, street vendors, and even laundry hanging out to drying. The atmosphere here is simply incredible, but the most thrilling moments come when a train passes through. Flooded railway tracks aren't good enough for reason to stop trains, especially in Asian countries where heavy rains and floods are common. You might wonder about the risk of electrical shorts, but modern trains, whether diesel or electric, are designed to be waterproof and nearly airtight. The same goes for electric trains. The current that passes through the traction equipment to the wheels which contact the rails follows the path of least resistance and doesn't flow into the water, but returns to the traction substation. The video shows footage of train brake tests. After the uncoupling, the tests were conducted at high speed, around 200 kilometers per hour at this point. You can clearly see the locomotive and the cars moving separately, but the train hasn't started slowing down yet. Oh my God! We're going through. When there's a lot of coal dust in the air, a steam tray turns into a real fire shed. During freezing weather, contact wires frequently ice over. This makes it harder for the power collector to maintain. Contact leading electric trains to spark. It might seem impressive, but it's not all that safe. This little that matches the grandeur of a classic steam train, setting off on its journey. But this time around, things took an unexpected turn. To everyone's dismay, it turned out that a catch point had been activated, and none of the station crew remembered that, or bothered to check the route. The Maklong market in Thailand is a magna for tourists. Imagine a narrow market right on a railway track. Every centimeter of space counts set, with goods placed just millimeters away from the rails. This remarkable synergy has thrived for over a century, ever since the Maklong vendors chose to stay put, despite the railway being built right through their historic market. Now we're in Bangladesh here. The fruit vendor stall is just centimeters away from the railroad, and he really doesn't want passengers to snatch his grapes as they pass by. A dramatic video shows a freight train accident in Brazil. Trains are like dominoes. If one car loses balance, the others nearby start to tip over too. It looks like the engineer might have been going too fast for this part of the track, causing vibrations that eventually let crash. Two incidents occurred in Poland with different drivers of farm machinery. Plus, they both perfectly illustrate what not to do at a railroad crossing ignoring the traffic lights. There is already taking a big risk. When diesel locomotive exhaust fumes burn off. Looks really intense. This thing is called a buffer stop, a stationary bumper installed at the end of tracks to protect trains from damage in case of a low-speed collision. These shots capture crash test, conducted to see how well it works. As you can see, the bumper worked as intended, though one of the cars still got pretty banged up. the experimental L0 series Shinkansen, a magnetic levitation track. Back in 2015, it set the world record for the fastest speed on a rail, hitting 603 kilometers per hour. It's a good reminder that accidents are rare. Rail transport is built on harmony and precision. Unloading train wagons is a key step. In railway transport, it's important to do it swiftly to prevent any holdups. Boss the team needs to handle all sorts of cargo at sometimes cramped conditions, so they've got some really skilled here. The process looks risky from the get-go. They're unloading a hefty bundle of steel rails from the rail car using a few forklifts. It's risky because it requires everyone to be completely coordinated. If not, it's bound to end in a loss of balance. These guys couldn't handle it. And nothing good came out of this. The cargo fell off, causing the rail car to flip over. One of the forklifts got stuck hanging by its own forks. On the bright side, none of the workers were hurt. This is how people get hit by the right line. This guy literally has a brand new bend in this gate. Is literally sitting on his carro? At the ports of Tequila, Turkey, they managed to stop the runaway part of train. The damaged gates actually helped by slowing down the car, preventing any further danger. Isn't it something? Rather than having a gated level crossing, the train crosses the road as if it's an everyday thing. From the way drivers act, it seems they're not keen, but waiting for the lengthy freight train. Many try to slip through before the locomotive passes. It's definitely something city officials should think about. In Atlanta, decommissioned subway cars are getting a second chance. At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, it's all a part of a major environmental initiative dating back to the 1970s. The idea is to build an artificial reef off Georgia's coast that's perfect for local wildlife. Before being submerged underwater, the cars were cleaned of any potentially harmful materials. Just a few months later, they'll be covered in a layer of coral and sponges. See this method of disposing of old train cars and equipment as a sustainable solution that supports ocean resources. Railway accidents are not often caught on camera, but their aftermath always becomes a popular subject for filming, especially since it's hard to quickly clear away the wreckage. Here we have the chance to see the results of an accident on a Polish railway. From different angles, it's clear that many freight cars were seriously damaged, with one of them even ending up on top of another. After the impact, the locomotive that derailed also sustained damage, but fortunately the engineer wasn't hurt. Normally in these situations, investigators will determine the cause, but based on what we can see, it looks like a brake system malfunction. Train car. Derailments often cause damage to the supports holding up the overhead wires. Sometimes accidents don't really look that impressive. I can't talk right now, I'm doing hot guy. This accident, where thankfully no one was hurt, seems like a clash of two eras. A car veered off the road and collided with a tourist steam train in Romania. The impact was so powerful that it knocked the locomotive off the tracks. Combined transport means using various transport modes to deliver one shipment, for instance. Railway cars that travel on sea ferries. The docking facilities are key in this process, ensuring smooth connection between the railway tracks on deck and those on land. From using electric trains, we know that pantographs are vital elements of the overhead system and require special care in this situation. There could have been a short circuit, or the wire could have overheated. The average freight train in the USA typically is around 70 cars and stretches over to kilometers long. It's no wonder any accidents, especially a large derailment, becomes a serious problem. In these drone shots from Tennessee, you can see rescue Crips in action. Within just a day, they've completely cleared up the chaos. Right after the crash, they've moved the scattered cars and, most importantly, completely fixed the damaged track. And now the trains are running smoothly again. Great job all around. A massive crash happened here when 17 coal cars went off the rails. They each weighed about 80 tons. So when they crashed, they really smashed each other up. After such an accident, restoring the railway involves clearing the track of derailed cars, laying down new tracks, and fixing the overhead line support. It's a massive operation that requires work, trains lots of construction equipment and workers.